Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll masech this Nazir daf Mem Dalid. We're going to begin on Mem Dalid Ben Aleph by the new Mishnah. Masnis and Shloishim Minin Asurin Ben Nazir. And of course we know what these three things are that pertain to a Nazir. Hatuma, he's not allowed to become Tami Mace. V'tigalachas, he's not allowed to cut his hair while he's a Nazir. And V'yotzim in Hagefen, he's not allowed to drink wine or anything that comes from grapes. Now, we say that they're not all the same. The dinim have different rules. Chaymer batuma v'tigalachas mishiyotzim in hagefen. Hatuma v'tigalachas, when it comes to becoming tamei and cutting the hair, seisrin. The din is that we're very strict, that there's at least some element of being seiser. That if you violate either becoming tamei mace or cutting your hair while you're a nazir, it'll end up causing some elements of the Naziris to be canceled. Therefore, you end up having to do more days than you originally anticipated. If you drink wine, it's not going to be seiser. You would still continue with the same amount of days, even though you're not allowed to obviously drink wine, but it's not going to be seiser in the Naziris. So that, and Taisa says, Behedim Matinan Le, but Gemara is going to explain this, how it's excluded. And then Chayim Rabbi Yotzim in a Gefen Mibatum of the Galachas. Yotzim in a Gefen, when it comes to drinking wine, Luhutim Achlolo. There's never a time that you're allowed to do it. However, Tum of the Galachas, Hutim Achlolon. However, there are times you could become Tameh, and this is actually question TA 19. TB 20 says this explicitly. It asks the question that where do we find Chayim Rabbi Yotzim in a Gefen Heichen hutter mecholon tuma v'tigalachas. So when it comes to tuma, as we saw in yesterday's daf as well, mace mitzvah, and tigalachas is mitzayra. If you, while you're a nazir, you're also mitzayra, then you've reached the purification process of having saras. So one of the things that a mitzayra has to do, as we've seen on many dafim, he has to cut his hair and even his beard. He completely shaves. So that's even while you're a Nazir. That's allowed. Okay. And it's a requirement. So that is also Hoteh B'chlol. Then finally, V'tigalachas mitzvah u'meis mitzvah. So when it comes to Tigalachas, it says it explicitly. Tigalachas mitzvah u'meis mitzvah. So what is this referring to? If a Nazir is a mitzayra, we cut his hair as it's a mitzvah, even though he's still a Nazir. So that's basically what he's saying. It's explicitly mentioning this case of Hoteh B'chlolo. V'tigalachas as a Mitzayra, and a Meis Mitzvah. Okay, so I mean, the Mefarsh says it, but it's a preparation of the Mishnah. V'chaymer b'tuma mibetgalachas shahatuma saisan asakoil. B'chayvin lehakarben tigalachas enu saisan el shloishim b'enu chayavin lehakarben. So even though both of these elements, becoming tameh while you're a nazir or cutting your hair while you're a nazir, is saiser, however, there is the distinction. When it comes to tuma, it's saiser completely. Even if you have nazirus maruba, even if it's a very long nazirus, we still cancel it all. And you also are obligated to bring a carbon asham, as well as either turim b'neyona, a dove or turtle dove, as part of the karbanos. And if you shave, the din is it's only sized at 30 days, even if it's nazirus maruba, because we just have to make sure that your hair grows back, and it has to be at least for 30 days for the hair to grow back, and you don't bring a carbon if a person does that. Okay, which is possibly question 3. Let's see. Question 3. Shloishim minim asurin mahu chomer betuma mebetiglachas. So he says shetuma saisin asakoil v'chayvin alei carbon. Okay. So let's see the Gemara. Betuma will tutar mechlolo kavachaymer miyayin. We should say that tuma, we should never allow you to become tameh, and we should learn that from wine. Ma yayin shenu saiser. Wine, we're not so strict. And because it's not saiser, if you drank wine as a nazir, nonetheless, you're not allowed to ever drink wine. There's no excuse to. So tuma shesaiseres, a tuma in which is so strict, enudin shul titimachol, we should never allow you to become tamei, even for a meis mitzvah. So the drush is you can't become tamei for your parents as a nazir, but you could for a meis mitzvah. But yayin yuter mechloloi kavachaymer matoma. When it comes to wine, maybe we should say they were around, that you should be allowed under certain circumstances to be able to drink wine. And we should learn it out from Tuma. How? Ma Tuma shehi so seres, even though Tuma is very strict, that it cancels and you have to make up all these days that you missed from being tamei, hotamachlala, there's still ways around it. You could still become tamei sometimes. So yain shenusayser enodin sheyutamachlala. So there certainly should be times that you should be allowed to drink. And Taisa says, for example, misha nishba shieshta. Let's say you made a shvua to drink. So in that situation, maybe in that you should do it. So Amar Kra miyain v'shecher yazir. The pasuk says, from wine you've separated yourself and made yourself a nazir. Laser yain mitzvah kan rishos. We say that there's no distinction. Even yain mitzvah, even though you made a shvua, you're supposed to be mekayim your shvua that you said I'm going to drink. Nonetheless, you're not allowed to. But yain yisteres hakoil. We should say that wine, by drinking wine as a nazir, it should be cancel it out. It should be seiser. Ma toma shehutim echlala. Even though toma is very lenient, that there's times you could become tamei. So Sarah says a kol. So yain shlo hutim echlala. The wine is so strict that you can never drink wine. So kosh kain shister. So drinking wine should be seiser as well. So Amar Kra b'hayomim harishanim yiplu ki tamei nizro. Tomos Seiseres in Hayayin Seiser. It's mefarish that only time it's Seiser is dafka when it's kitame nizro, when you become tame, not any other way. Why do we say galachas? It's only have to wait, let's say 30 days. Even by Nazir's Maruba, should be tistor sakoil, and we should learn that from Toma. Ma Toma shulasuba matama kimatama. So when it comes to someone who is tamei, so you're not allowed to become tamei. What if you made another person tamei? It says Mefarish, sheha matama as a nazir. If a person made a nazir tamei in oiver, then you haven't done any violation. Maybe it's overlifting iver, but you haven't violated anything per se, specifically for a nazir. So if you made someone tamei, it's not the same thing as the person who becomes tamei. So we're lenient there, but so says a kol. So think alacha shasuba megalech kemiskalach enodin tistor sakoil. So when it comes to shaving, that the person who does the shaving is also over a lav, as the Mefarish says that we'll see later on. Tar lo yavar al rosho and karibe lo yavir le acher. You're not allowed to do it someone else. So a barber is not allowed to cut the hair of a nazir, and if he does, he's also in violation. So since we're so strict over there, so then certainly a nazir who shaves his hair should certainly be seiser sakol. But we say it's only by tamei because Omer Kraba Hayom Rishonim Yiplu Ki Tamei Nizru Tuma So Seres Sakoil V'Intigalachas Sakoil. So from the same pasuk, even though it's true there is an element of being seiser, but not seiser sakol, that's specifically unique based on this pasuk by a person who became tamei. And then the Gemara asks another question: the Tuma Nase Ba Matama Kimatama Kavachamit Galachas. We should say that no. That when it comes to a person who becomes tamei, or someone who even makes that person tamei, he should also be over from the person who shaves. When it comes to galachas, we're not so strict. You are so strict, it's only 30 days. So since we're lenient, but nonetheless, we still say that if you shave someone else's hair, you are still over a lav. Of the lav of Taru Yavor al Rosho. So Toma, she says as a call, Toma, which were so strict, Inodin Shinasaba Matama Kamatama. So if you made someone Tame, you should also be over a lav. So Amakra, the Tami Rosh Nizroi. Lamatama Rosh Nizro. So it says if you made Tame, the Nazir made his head Tame, which means that only his own head, he made himself Tame. That's the only time we say that you're going to be over a lav, but not if someone else somehow makes you tamei. So how about the other way around? When it comes to shaving, you should not be chayiv if you're a barber shaving someone else's hair, because we should learn how to kavach from tuma. Ma tuma shehi so says as a koil. We're so strict, but nonetheless, nonetheless, the person who made this other guy tame is not over alav. So tegalacha sheinu says el shloishim yoim. So here they throw in the word yom, that it's for 30 days, so it's not so strict. So we shouldn't make the barber chayiv for cutting the nazir's hair. So So as we said before in the Mafarish, Karibay lo yavor hu v'lo yavor la'acher. So it's not just that you can't have your hair cut, but also you can't have someone else cannot cut your hair on your behalf, and if they do, then that person is also violating it. So again, let's say we know when it comes to a Matzaira, there is Chutah B'chloloi, but maybe we should not allow the Matzaira to have his hair cut while he's a Nazir. We know that when it comes to wine, it's not seiser, so we're very lenient if you drank wine as a nazir, but nonetheless, there's no way ever you can drink wine while a nazir. So take galachas, so in the situation of galachas in which there is an element of being seiser, so we're more strict, so certainly we should say you should never be allowed to cut your hair, even as a matzaira. So Amrachmana Rosho, Amrachmana Ziknoi. So it says Rosho and Zikanoi. So what? Says the Mafarish, Demiyatri, these are extra words. We saw this actually before. So we use those extra words as a drasha that even though normally a nazir is not allowed to cut his hair, but we're because we have these extra words that if you're a mitzara that we do cut your hair. But tegalachas lotister klal. Maybe we should say we shouldn't be seiser at all when it comes to shaving. We're so strict when it comes to wine that you can't ever drink wine, but nonetheless you're not seiser at all. So the galacha shehut we're lenient by shaving by a mitzara. So it should be that there should not be any den being seiser if you shaved your hair. The reality is, in order, says the Mafarish, and when you're bringing the carbon, there is an element of giluach, of shaving. And if your hair hasn't grown back for 30 days, there's no giluach. It's not shaykh to do. So therefore, it's just a practicality. Even though maybe you're right, the kal v'chomer may stand, but the reality is you still have to do giluach. And if your hair doesn't have a chance to grow back, then you won't be able to do giluach. Maybe in fact drinking wine should be for a 30 days should be seiser. Why? When it comes to shaving. We're so lenient, so seres, nonetheless it's seiser for 30 days. So we're so strict by wine, there's never a time you can't drink, they're allowed to drink wine as a nazir. The only reason is because, again, you want the hair to grow. The hair is still there. So there's no reason to say that you should have to be seiser when it comes to wine. The only reason why we're seiser 30 days, again, for the hair is not as a chumrah, it's just as a mitzias that you need to be able to have your hair grow back, and that's the time allotted that you need. As we continue to Mem Dalad and Beis with the next Mishnah, Masnisin. Tegalachas, Tuma Ketzad Hoy. So what exactly do you do? What Ketzad? What is the process of when it comes to someone who is tameh, and therefore he has a requirement of doing this, waiting for 7 days, cutting his hair, bringing karbonos, as we already alluded to, if he became tameh. So Ketzad, so what is it? So of course we know, as it says in Parshas Chukas, that he needs to be sprinkled by the paraduma on the 3rd and 7th day of his tumah, and then he will do the shaving on the 7th day. Maybe karbonaisa b'shmini, as we said, brings an asham, tor, b'nei yoina on the 8th day. Okay, so that's what he does. So everything is done on the 7th. He shaves. and then he waits that night, and then the next morning, the 8th day, he's a mechusar kippurim, and he brings the karbanos. Now, v'im gilach mishmini, maybe karbanos of bo b'yom. Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva says, an interesting chiddush, that even though, let's say, for whatever reason, you didn't shave on the 7th day, but it's now the 8th day, you can do everything you needed to do, and also bring the carbon on the very same day. Armalei Rav Tarfon, ma bein zel mitzayra. How is this different than a mitzayra? So first, let's look at the Mefarish, then we're going to see the Rush. So the Mefarish says that we will she'af kain shaninu b'mitzayra, she'af hu tegalachas shniya b'shvi. So when it comes to the mitzayra, he's supposed to shave on the 7th day. V'gilachas kol sa'ar v'rachas b'mayim v'taher v'yashim l'chutz ha'holoi. Because he's a mitzayra, he's still outside of the ohel. He's outside for shiva shamim. V'yom hashvi galachas kol sa'aru maybe karbonoso b'shmini. However, it says that if he shaves on the 8th day, maybe karbanosov, it says over here, bishmini, or bo biyom, okay? Which sounds like it's really the exact same thing. That's why we need to see the Rush. The Rush says like this. Megaleach, so Nazir Shem indicates who Megaleach. So Megaleach Mazayin. He shaves on the 7th. Umhevi carbon b'ches on the 8th day. K'lichsev gilach rosho b'yom ta'araso. Then he shaves on the day of his purity. B'yom hazayin yigal chenu. On the 7th day he shaves. B'yom haches yavi beis turim. He brings these turtle doves. The keves l'osham. He brings a carbon osham, a guilt offering. So on this, the Rosh says this: Ma bein zel mitzayra dechsiv beparshas mitzayra betegalachas beis on the 2nd shaving. Oyabiyom hazayin yigalachas kol sa'ari. He shaves all of his hair on the 7th day. V'chibes begadav. He washes his clothes. V'rachatzas b'sar b'mayim. He has to go to the mikvah of atar and he becomes pure. So again, he has to wait until that night. There's erev shemesh, and then he after doing all these different things, including going to the mikvah, and then erev shemesh the next day, v'yom ches yavi beis torim b'kivsa. The kaimelan b'mitzayra that we learn out when it comes to a mitzayra, the im gilach b'ches maybe kamanas of b'tes. So again, this is not seemingly how the Mefarish reads this, but this is how we're going to learn according to the Rush. That he says that for some reason, when it comes to the mitzorah, the din is that if for whatever reason, even you're supposed to have shaved on the 8th, just like a Nazir, on the 7th, just like a Nazir, but if you wait until the 8th by a Nazir, you could still bring your karbanos on the 8th, the same day. However, when it comes to a mitzorah, you have to wait an entire day, you have to do it on the 9th. So Omerle, so your Mishnah says, Zet taharosa tuliya b'yamav. When it comes to a Nazir, his tahara is connected to the days, and therefore the 8th day he brings a carbon. However, when it comes to Mitzara, his purification is connected to his shaving. Going to the mikvah and shaving, and it has to be done the day before he brings the carbon. He needs erev shemesh. So when it comes to the Mitzara, because it's connected to Tegalachas, he requires erev shemesh. And because it requires erev shemesh, so therefore, if let's say you didn't do the tegalachas until the 8th day, so you still require erev shemesh. That's why you can't bring the karbanos until the 9th day. Mashenkin, when it comes to a situation of a nazir, the din isn't that way. Rather, it's tuliya b'yomav, and therefore you could shave and bring the carbon all on the same day on day 8. So let's see the Rush. Armalei shezet taharas tuliya b'yomav. Nazir taharosa tulia b'hazos gimel v'zayin uvatfila. It's all connected to how he becomes pure. He becomes pure on the 3rd day and the 7th day, and then his tefillah on that 7th day. Hilkach kivan shenitar b'zayin. He becomes pure on the 7th day after the paraduma and the tefillah. Alu mishol gilach ad yom haches. Even though he didn't actually do the gilach until the 8th day, maybe karbanasa bo b'yom, he can still do it. Alva mitzayra taharasa tulia betekalachto. Kersiv bayom hazayin yigalach eskol sa'aro. It says you're supposed to shave his hair v'hader ksiv, and then it says after you've done that, v'rachas b'sor b'mayim v'taher. So it's clear that it's telling us that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to first shave your hair and then go to the mikvah, which make your teful yoim, you wait for erev shemesh, then the next day you bring karbanos. The im tovel ad shel gilach, because if you would go out of order, if you went to the mikvah before you shaved, lo asel tefillah, it doesn't help. for a mitzvah. Hilkach im gilach b'ches, if you shave it on the 8th day, kati sarach erev shemesh, because after you go to the mikveh, you still need erev shemesh, and therefore hilkach enu yochel havi kamanos ad shi. You're not allowed to bring it until the 9th. Okay, so that's the seemingly the simple reading of this Mishnah. Okay. So Zed Tahara, so back in the Mishnah, Zed Tarasa Tuli B'Yamim, Masar Tarasa Tuli B'Tilachtai. Then it may be Karmenalim Kin Hayim or of Shemesh. Again, because what do you need to do? You do the Kalachat, you do the shaving, and then you go to the mikvah. And once you go to the mikvah, you need Erev Shemesh. All of this took place on the 7th day. But if it wasn't done until the 8th day, the shaving, then you need to go to the mikvah. Then you need Erev Shemesh. Then the 9th day is when you bring the karbonos. So the Gemara asks a question. Kibla minei olo. Were we Mikabel this answer or not? In other words, was Rav Tarfon, so the Mishnah said Rav Tarfon asked a question, and then Rabbi Kiva responded to Rav Tarfon, and he said this chiluk. The question is, does Rav Tarfon agree to Rabbi Kiva? So Tashma, the Tani Hillel learned as follows. Gilach b'shmini, if we're dealing with a Nazir Tameh, in which our Mishnah said, if let's say you shaved on the 8th day, maybe karbonosav, but and he actually holds, no, you have to actually wait until the 9th. Now, if in fact he accepted this, we said that that's not the din. You can actually bring the karbonos on the 8th day. So it must be, we see from here, that lo kibul mina. He doesn't agree to this, that even when it comes to a Nazir Tameh, you can't just bring the karbonos on the same day of Giluach. It has to be Giluach and then the next day. That's what it says beferish. You have to wait until the 9th. Amarava lo kasha. Ha de tavel b'shvi. Ha de lo tavel b'shvi. So there's a bigger issue here. There wasn't, when it comes to a Nazir Tameh, again, when it comes to a Mitzayra, you have to first do the Kalachas and then the mikvah, because that's the Gzeras HaKosav, how it's written. Not when it comes to a Nazir. A Nazir Tameh doesn't have to, but he does have to at least do the tefillah. So if he did tefillah b'shvi, so then he accomplished the mikvah and Erev Shemesh, and then on the 8th day he could shave and bring the karbonos. But if he was not tavel b'shvi, so then certainly in that situation he would have to wait until the 9th day. Amr Abai. So Abai says like this: They're sitting and they were saying, the pasuk says, "Uvolifnei Hashem al Pesach ol Moed," and the entire pasuk, a lengthy pasuk, in Sefer Vayikra Tesvav, Vayom Hashmini, on the 8th day, Yikach lo shtei tayrim o shnei be'ona. Again, he has to bring either 2 doves or 2 turtle doves, Ulifnei Hashem, and they go in front of Hashem al Pesach ol Moed, Unasanam el Kayin, and it's given to the Kayin. So it says, Unasanam el Kayin. So Emasai Guba. When is he able to go, namely into the Machna Levia, Bismanshu Taval, only after he's immersed himself in a mikvah, V'asa Erev Shemesh in, and he's actually accomplished Erev Shemesh. Lo Taval V'asa Erev Shemesh, lo. But if, let's say, he was not Taval, and therefore he did not achieve Erev Shemesh, then he's not allowed to go into Machna Levia. Al Maksavar, so we clearly hold that a Tful Yom Shel Zav, Kizav Dami, that a Tvul Yoim has the same status as a Zav even after he's already gone into the mikvah. So let's hold off 1 second and let's look at the Mefarish over here. Omer Rava. So Rava said again, Olam Kibla. He really was makabel what Rabbi Kiva said. The Hadi Amanim Isa de Kibla Minei Laisim Mishmini, so bring on the 8th, not the 9th. No, well, kasha dechi amar in gilach mishmini yavi kamanasa mishmini. You can know on the 8th day is the tavel b'shvi shahoylo erev shemesh, because he went to the mikvah on the 7th day. It was erev shemesh, and therefore he's allowed on the 8th day to shave and bring the carbon. The hadad tani hillel maybe kamanasa b'shi kagoin. And what it says kagoin, it's doloi tavel. It's where you didn't yet go to the mikvah on the 7th. Ad shmini until the 8th. And Nazir also needs Erev Shemesh, and then only afterwards the next day can he bring the karbanos. So as long as he went to the mikvah on the 7th day, so then he could bring the carbon on the 8th day, provide even though he didn't shave until the 8th day. But if he didn't even achieve Erev Shemesh, then he would have to wait until the 9th. Skipping down to the next Mefarish, Rabbi, When it says that when a zav who has similar emission becomes pure from his becoming a zav, and is a chiyuv to count for 7 days, which there's no chiluk. Even a zav who saw shtei re'ios, even 2 sightings, is mechuyev to count 7 days. The only chiluk is if you saw 3 days, then there is a chiyuv of karbonos, a zav who saw 3 times. But the tumah is the same, that you need to wait 7 days, and the din of a tful yom is the same, even if you only saw 2 re'ios. The Mafar says, so this pasuk is talking about a zav that after on the 8th day he's mechuyev, and he counts after the 7 days. He finishes counting on the 8th day. He brings his karbonos. So when is this zav allowed to go into the Machna Leviyah? We'll have you to bring these karbonos. He has to wait until the 8th day. It's required for Zav to first do Tefillah and Erev Shemesh on the day before, on the 7th day. However, Alma Dechi Osa Erev Shemesh in the Mutal Chanas Lazara. Lo Osa Erev Shemesh lo. Only time he's allowed to enter into the Azara is Dafka when he actually achieved Erev Shemesh. Alma, says the Mefarish, Dechi Heichin Dezav Osa Chanas B'Machna Leviyah Dahainu Ba'Azara. Since he's not allowed to enter Hachinami Tvul Yoim Shel Zov. So too when it comes to a Tvul Yoim. The same din is he's not allowed to go in until he achieves Erev Shemesh. Whether or not he was toivel or not, you still have to wait until you have again achieved Erev Shemesh. Aminu lohinana el miyata gabi nazir tami nami should say the same thing. The pasuk says el hakoyin el pesach hamoed, and the entire pasuk says v'yom hashmini, on the 7th day again yavi shtei tarim shtei b'niyona, same karbonos el pesach hamoed. So the din of a nazir should be the exact same as the zav. That it says el pesach hamoed imosai huba. So when is this nazir allowed to go into the Machna Leviyah, to the Azara, Mizman Shetaval Yosa Erev Shemesh. It's only once he actually achieved Tvila and Erev Shemesh. So Michli, let's see as we continue Mem Hey Aleph. Sha'ari Niknor Hechi Kaiman Bishari Leviyah. Now we know that when it comes to a Mitzayra who is not just a Mitzayra, but anyone who's a Mechusar Kippurim, because they're lacking, they're not able to actually physically go into the Azara. So therefore, they go to the Shar Niknor, and that is where that's where the karbonos are given. And when it comes to Mitzayra, he also has to stick parts of his body into the Shar Niknor, and that this way he could receive the blood in that area, because he's not physically allowed to enter into that area, so he can go up until putting parts of his limbs in there. So, Shar Niknar, Hechi Kaimna Mishar Leviyah. Velsanya Tami Mace, when it comes, someone who's Tami Mace, Moto Echanas B'Machna Leviyah. Now, Tami Mace is actually allowed to go into the Machna Leviyah. They're not allowed to be in Machna Shechina. Says the Mefarish, okay, fine. V'lo Tami Mace, Movad, Ella Afil Mace Atzma, even a dead body itself, right, is allowed to be in Machna Leviyah. It just can't be in Machna Shechina. Shneimar v'yikach Moshe etz Atzmos Yosef imoi. That Moshe took the Atzmos Yosef with him. Ma imo b'mechitzasai, imo Machna Leviyah. That he actually kept the remains of Yosef, which is obviously a mace, right? The remains of Yosef, when he left Mitzrayim, he had it with him. So a mace, or a mace, someone's tummy mace mitzvah, tummy mace rather, that individual is allowed to be in Machna Leviyah, but not Machna Shechina. So what is the issue over here? So let's look in the Mefarish. So Hey Chahavi Kaima B'Shari Leviyah. V'ilu Machna Leviyah Filu Mace Atzmo HaYachal Chanes. V'Hai Nazir Tamei Mace Have. He's a Tamei Mace, V'mai ini yochel lechanis ad di avid erev shemesh. Doesn't make any sense. Why does he have to wait until erev shemesh? After all, we know that a mace itself could be in machna leviyah. What's the problem? Why do we say that a Nazir who's tamei mace, okay, by a zav, there may be a different reason, but someone who's tamei mace, we see is allowed to go into machna leviyah. Elam midahachal lav dafka. The fact is, since the pasuk says this, it doesn't mean it literally that he's not allowed to be in machna leviyah. He's allowed. Hasam nami lav dafka gabi zav. Befil erev shimsho kivan de tava yachal chanas l'sham. Maybe the reality is, when it comes to a zav, the same din is the same, that he's allowed in his mechusar kippurim. But once he's actually been toivel, he can already enter machna leviyah. What's the difference, in other words, between a zav and a nazir? By a nazir, he clearly should be able to enter into machna leviyah. He's tamei mace. Even a mace itself is allowed to be in machna leviyah. So the fact that that's allowed, then we should say the same thing by a zav. So the Gemara answers like this: Elam Rabbi tful yoim shel zav kizav dami. When it comes to tful yoim of a zav, actually has the same status of a zav that was already toivel. But since he saw 3 times, he's a mechusar kipara, he still has to bring karbanos, and therefore he can't answer the machna leviyah. Via b'machna leviyah koi, and let's say he's in the machna leviyah, amai kakari le oil moyed, lememra mahas a mechusar kapara lo ayol, he can't enter. A mechusar kapara can't enter. Aflo machna leviyah nami mechusar kapara lo ayol. I have a hasam anolim. How do we know it's true? The sanya tamiyel or rabos tvul yoim oy tu masabo or rabos mechusar kapara. So we're mechalik between a zav who sees 2 times, a zav who sees 3 times. Only a zav who sees 3 times can go into machna leviyah, and because he's actually missing 2 things, he's missing, even though let's say he was toivel, he doesn't achieve erev shemesh, and he also has not brought the karbanos. So he has 2 things that are lacking. Mashenkin, when it comes to a zav harash shtei re'ios, if you only saw 2 times, so therefore you are allowed to enter because there's no chiyuv of karbanos. So the only thing he's lacking is erev shemesh. So that's the chiluk between seeing 2 times and 3 times. If you look in Taisas el omer bay tful yom zav lav kizav dami. I feel haki when the mechusar kapara lo ayol. Avol haydis here lo kizav dami lo inin the shach nezarkan alav mikol macham asal chanes hayol the mechusar kippurim lo ayol b'machna leviyah. As you said, a mechusar kippurim is not allowed to enter into machna leviyah, and therefore that is the issue at hand when it comes to a zav. So the reality is that if you are missing erev shemesh as well as missing karbanos, then you cannot enter machna leviyah. And therefore we could extend this also to a nazir who is tamei, because a nazir who is tamei, who, if he did the mikvah and erev shemesh, so then the next day he could shave on the 8th day and also bring the karbanos. But as we said, if let's say, for example, he didn't go to the mikvah yet, so he still needs erev shemesh and karbanos, so therefore in that situation he'd have to wait until the next day. Okay, we're going to stop here. Let's see maybe a question or 2. Question 4. Tani Hillel, Gilach b'shmini, maybe b'shmini, you're supposed to bring it on the 8th day, which is not really the gears over here. It says chi. L'gabi mi Tani Hillel kach. How does it say the 8th and not the 9th? V'ech esher l'tirtza liv de kol yalma. That's what he says here. L'inyan nazir tamei masnia. He's learning regarding nazir tamei. V'oifen shigam tavel b'shmini. If he's tavel on the 8th day, v'hu tvul yoim bo bayom azli de kol yalma. So if let's say he was tavel on the 8th day, and then he's toivel boy v'yom on that day, ozla leave the kol yama. I think really it should say, again, there's different girsas, that's the whole thing, but according to the Rush, the girsas of Rush, it's b'chi, right? And therefore, that's what it says in the Gemara, and therefore that l'chayra is the pashna pshat, is that there's a chilik in the situation where you are a Mitzayra, where you are a whether or not you're a Mitzayra or a Nazir. By Mitzayra, as we said, because the pasuk explicitly says there's an order, there is a way of doing this. First, it says you have to yigalach es kol sa'ara, then v'rachatz b'sor b'mayim v'taher, so therefore it has to be in that order. So if you didn't end up shaving until the 8th day, you can't bring karbanos until the 9th. Okay. All right. Let's see. Question 5, maybe. Let's see what question. Maybe we did this as well. Let's see. No. Let's see. First of all, TB 20 we did. Azocarbon, Megimel Carbonos, that's going to be tomorrow's daf. TA 20, Tanan Hoya Noitel Sar Rosh Nizum Umeshalach Tachas Adoid, Adkan.